Living Adaptive.
The goal is to adapt and thrive despite the adversity you face.
You're going to have that little voice inside of you trying to push yourself.
I set a vision for myself, and now I'm seeing it come to fruition.
I'm grateful for losing my leg.
There's just some things you must endure in life.
You might crash. You might fail.
You can find a purpose in your suffering.
I'm not special. I've just decided that I'm not going to stop.
You do everything you possibly can.
We want to change the world.
I'm going to adapt to it and make it the way it works for me.
Take what it is from life that you want and enjoy it.
All right, what's up, everybody? This is Scott Davidson. This is Living Adaptive. If you don't know, go to living_adaptive on Instagram or livingadaptive.com, and you can find all kinds of links to previous shows, guests, show notes, all that kind of stuff. So go there. Today we have on Jill Englund of Best of Cancer, and Jill has been on before. And Jill's one of those interviews that I go back to a lot because she's a really profound person. She's really cool to hang out with, and really happy to have her back here. And I almost feel like she needs to be here each year because of the causes she works on. So Jill, what's up? How are you doing?
Hi, Scott. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm surviving the stay-at-home stuff. Do you have any tips to survive stay-at-home, this whole coronavirus?
Oh my gosh. I think this global crisis that we're in is a lot like the personal crises that I've been through in my life, where you really have to take it day by day. You can't worry too much about what's to come because it will just send you into an anxiety tailspin. So I find myself practicing a lot of things I learned through cancer right now during this COVID-19.
Yeah,
I'm on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay. I'm on my 4th week of quarantine at home with the kids, not working. I've become a homeschool mom to a 4th grader, a 1st grader, and a preschooler. So my life looks very different right now than it did a month ago. So we're just trying to take it, one day at a time, do the best we can. We have our good days, we have our bad days, but we're all in it together.
Yeah, so you have 3 kids. I have 3 kids also, so they take up a ton of time. Mine are a little bit older though. My oldest is a 9th grader, so I'm 30. I'm every bit of 39 now, so I'm feeling it. I don't know when you were first diagnosed with having cancer, but I remember the story about when you were 9, and then that set up a trajectory of a lot of things. And one of the most, I guess, there's a few difficult experiences that I remember from your story. We're going to jump into it a little bit, but what is it like to go through a rotationplasty? And by the way, I met somebody in Las Vegas that knows you based on your surgery. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we hung out.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll have to talk.
Yeah, I bought him a coffee, by the way, because of that. Oh. I'm like, you do not. And he's like, yeah, I know Jill. And I'm like, that's cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So anyways, what's a rotationplasty like? How old were you? And how'd you get through all that?
Well, I was 9 years old when I was diagnosed. Prior to my diagnosis, I was a healthy, active young girl. I was 9. I had just finished 3rd grade, and I was going into the summer. And I was looking forward to all of the fun things that every kid looks forward to in the summer. Swimming, playing with friends. And all of that came to an end when I was limping around the softball field, and I was having pain in my leg off and on. So my parents decided to take me in to have it checked out, and they took me to an orthopedic doctor who examined my leg. Everything looked healthy and fine as far as what he could see, but he wanted to take an x-ray just to make sure that it wasn't something more serious. So we did that x-ray. It came back and it was cancer. My parents instantly knew something was terribly wrong when they saw the film. And I was only 9 years old, so I didn't really understand the gravity that this was going to have in my life. I just knew that I could see the worry and the concern in my parents' eyes.
Yeah.
And really the whirlwind started pretty quickly. Within a week after my diagnosis, I had a port placed. I had a biopsy taken of the tumor and started my first round of chemotherapy within 7 days.
What do you remember as a kid, as a 9-year-old, besides all the medical interventions? Did you remember missing out on stuff, or do you remember maybe attention you received? What was it?
Gosh, I remember feeling really disappointed a lot of that summer because I was stuck in the hospital. I was feeling awful, throwing up all day long some days. And meanwhile, you're thinking about your friends, my sisters that were out riding their bikes and going to the pool. So I really felt lonely and isolated. And your everyday normalcy changes instantly. I mean, the things that you knew and that you did each day is totally different. And now my days involved going to the hospital, having blood drawn, a port accessed, and then chemotherapy put into my body, which made me sick. So it was a roller coaster ride, to say the least.
How many interviews did you do growing up? Like, how many people, like, I need to talk to this girl who's going through so much? How many interviews? How much attention did you get?
We did some different interviews with media outlets. If there were fundraising events going on, I'd always say yes to that opportunity, because I think anytime you can raise awareness for something that's not as common or known about, I am all for that. A lot of what I did was facilitated by my nurses and my doctor, where they were great about connecting patients and kids that were all going through this same cancer experience so that we would have each other to lean on. And almost instantly, I had a mentor, Scott Carter, who I was introduced to. And he was an amazing kid. He was so funny. You couldn't not have a good time if you were around him, because he was always telling jokes, making pranks, doing funny things. But he also was like my mentor and my guide throughout my cancer experience, because he was diagnosed about 3 months before I was. So when I was just starting chemo, he was ready and being prepared for surgery. And then when I was going to surgery, he was being fitted for his first prosthetic and so on. So he was always just one step ahead, and he would always come back and share with me what the next step looked like. And for a child who really didn't have any sense of control over what was going on in her life, it gave me a lot of peace knowing that not only he understood what I was going through, but he could prepare me for what I was going to be seeing in the next stage. So because of Scott, I started doing the same thing for other kids, because I knew how important it was in my life.
Now, I ask you about speaking, I say this because you're a very good speaker. You're a motivational speaker.
Thank you.
Yeah, you are. You've been doing it at such a young age. You had a big responsibility. I mean, you're carrying the torch for St Baldricks. You're showing up in very difficult situations where you're talking to children and parents that are, going through a process similar to what yours is. Although yours is very unique with the rotationplasty and other things surrounding it, but you've been in this game speaking for a long time. And that makes me think, like, you've got to have some pretty insightful ideas. Like, what do you say to a kid that is going through something like that, or a parent? You can pick which one, or both, that are supporting a child and caregiving through that process, because it's a pretty wild challenge.
It is. And I think it's a little different when you approach it from the child's aspect versus the parents. Mm-hmm. For the kids, they're kind of my first outreach source. I really want them to know above all else that I understand what they're going through and that they're not alone. I think when you're a child going through cancer treatment and amputation, you feel very alone, because it's not something any of your friends are going through. You're kind of plucked from your day-to-day life, and you're put into this hospital scenario, and you're around adults all the time. So to see another little kid that knows what you're going through is so powerful. So first I start with that. And then I really let them know that it's okay to take things one day at a time, and to just kind of slow things down, because otherwise you find yourself worrying about things that you can't control. And on the bad days, sometimes you don't take it one day at a time. Sometimes you have to take it 1 minute at a time. If you're working through nausea, pain, certain sufferings that are emotional, sometimes you just have to take it one moment at a time and just survive that moment, breathe, and really lean on the people that are there to support you.
Why is St Baldricks so important to you? Because you're involved with them a lot, and I see, like, in your Instagram highlights, for instance, or whatever the little feed is at the bottom, St Baldricks is always there. It's always on your. What is it about St Baldricks?
I love St Baldricks because they do funding for pediatric cancer and for kids only. I was able to speak at their head shaving event last summer, which was awesome. They had men and women and children shaving their heads in support of pediatric cancer, raising money, but also raising that support. I mean, someone who's willing to go shave their head in support of childhood cancer. I mean, as a bald child, that means a lot to see someone else shave their head and to choose to do that. So I support St Baldricks because of their pediatric cancer support, and really pediatric cancer is grossly underfunded. They only have 4% of national funding. So I think any organization that focuses on the kids, they're my go-tos.
They're important to me too. The Tilton family is very important to me. Their child was a St Baldricks kid 2 years ago, I think now. And he's doing well. He's doing awesome. So like, it's great to see the impacts there. Now I got to jump to this. You get a lot of questions too. You get some wild questions. I love that you put it up there for like basically an ask me anything, which is kind of brave if you think about it, especially in today's climate, because an anonymous person could fly by and just pepper you with terrible questions. And I hear it all the time. I mean, every single day I hear it from friends that are kind of more public with their personas. And so like, what kind of crazy stuff gets thrown your way? You know, what kind of crazy questions and comments get thrown your way?
The craziest or the weirdest thing people ask, and they've asked this since the beginning, from the time that I first had surgery to even today, is people will ask, when are they going to turn your foot back around?
Really?
Because with rotationplasty, the foot is turned backwards to serve as the new knee, and that is how the surgery works. And it baffles me that people think, like, when is it going to be turned back around? It's like, no, this is it. Like, this is it permanently for a reason. So that's probably the weirdest thing that I still get every now and then now, because I changed the way my prosthetic looks. The top part of it, I used to have it be like a skin tone, but really it was like a weird flesh beige leather material that didn't look natural at all. So I was like, I don't like how this looks. I'm just going to do black. So I just did all black up top. I'm like, that's going to weather better. It looks more athletic, whatever. So I did that. And I've noticed now when I go out and about with the black prosthetic, people will ask me like, oh, what happened to your leg? Like it was an athletic injury. It looks kind of like a knee brace instead of a prosthetic. And I'm like, oh, I had childhood cancer. Like, oh, so it's permanent. Like, it's not growing back. This is it.
Yeah, I hear that. There was an athlete I knew from the Carolinas, and her local congregation, whatever church it was, said maybe pray, pray, and who knows, it could like come back. I don't think it's gonna, But let me jump to this real quick though. Is that you get a lot of crazy questions too. You're very public about it. You do a lot of speaking and so forth. But like it had to have been like much harder than what you've got on the front lines, and maybe something's not captured in your story that people that interview you, I mean, we're talking years and years of interviews, years and years of questions that may not get picked up in your story. Do you have something you want to share, like where maybe we're just not catching it, we're just not catching this side of you?
Yeah, I think really the most important thing in that aspect is the fact that the struggle of life and the struggle and the after effects of cancer don't stop when treatment's over. That a lot of times we have lasting effects on our health that show up later, and those can be really scary events that we have to deal with. And then even the emotional side. I think one of the biggest challenges after my treatment was rejoining my peers at school. I was taken out of school for a year to go through treatment, and then you come back as an amputee. I had very little hair that I was trying to grow back, and you aren't the same person. And I think the hardest thing or the most important thing for me to learn has been that life will never be the same. And I have to embrace the changes that I went through and learn from that so that I can grow and come into a new life differently and better, and not just wish that it was what it was in the past.
Your kids are so young. Do they grasp what mom went through?
Sometimes I think they get it. I think my oldest, who's 10, understands it more than the other two who are a little bit younger. And he's always saying, I love your leg. I love your little leg. This is so cool that you wear this prosthesis. Yeah. So my kids, they think it's either great or they don't care at all.
You dealt with so much uncertainty as a child. And so you mentioned, it's kind of applicable, the experience you had going through this now, being shut in and so forth. How did you deal with all that uncertainty?
Oh, I think I deal with it differently when I was a child than I do as an adult.
Worse or better?
I think it's harder as an adult. I think we're more stubborn. I think that we resist and fight change instead of, as a child, I just accepted what it is it is what it is. I can't change certain things. And I feel like I got to that acceptance stage a lot faster as a kid. And as an adult, I like fight and try to like tweak and control things so that I maybe don't have to go through something difficult. So I think that it gets harder in that way as an adult, but it's important. It's an important step to first accept the new normal, accept that it's happening. And then another important step is to face your fears, because I feel like I've gotten better at that part than I did when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I didn't want to add any more burden to my parents as far as like coming to them with my fears or my worries. I know they would have been there to support me, my doctors, nurses, parents, but a lot of times you feel guilty that you're putting people through so much and you don't want to burden them with maybe your worries or your fears. So a lot of times I wouldn't even really give a lot of acknowledgement to my fears. I would just say, if I can't control it, I'm going to let it go. And if I can control it, I'll do something about it. And I think that's a great aspect to take. But as an adult, I'm now learning that it is also important to not only acknowledge your fears, but talk to somebody you trust about them.
Wow. Yeah, that's a heavy one. You just said like you didn't want to put an extra burden on mom and dad while you're going through all of that. Like that's a pretty big one to think about, is to take that weight as a child and carry over and deal with that. You've taken a step back from social media. We talked about it a tiny bit offline. What have you been up to since our last interview? Like what's keeping you busy right now?
Oh, my kids are keeping me the most busy right now.
Did you ever go through the process of like, why me? Like, why me? And if so, how'd you deal with that?
As a kid, I didn't really go through the why me as much. I think I looked at my mentor, Scott, who was in the same boat as I was. And I looked at him and I thought, he is such a cool, awesome, amazing person. Like, if I'm in the same category as him, then okay, I'll just deal with it. You know, we're in this together. Again, as an adult, I feel like that thought of why me comes up a lot more now as an adult than it did when I was a kid. Now I'll kind of feel like, oh, you get down on yourself thinking, man, my life feels so much harder than other people's. And you feel like you're ready to throw a pity party because you're feeling bad about the struggles that I might be going through. But I think it's important to acknowledge that that's only half of the truth. And we have to balance our thoughts out. That if we feel like, why am I struggling so much more than someone else? We're really comparing ourselves to people that we think are better off than we are in the moment.
Sure.
But we also have to look at people who are struggling worse than us. And what we see when we look at that comparison is, oh, I have a lot to be grateful for. And I try to balance out that why me with gratitude to think, well, what do I have? There's always something I have to be grateful for. At the end of the day, even on the hardest day, I have a lot that I'm grateful for.
What are you most grateful for right now? Some of the things you're most grateful for. You speak about that a lot, your gratitude. What is it?
I do. I'm most grateful for my kids. My children are like always at the top of my list of my gratitudes. At the end of the night, I usually like say a prayer and I like thank God for all the things that I appreciate and I'm grateful for. And they're always at the top of the list. I'm thankful for Zoom and Skype so I can connect with other humans during this isolation time. I'm grateful for a lot of the amazing authors that are putting out books and materials that I can read and learn more about myself and life in general while life is slowed down a little bit.
What's your favorite resource to get through this right now? Like, there's got to be something good, like a good resource that you've used besides Zoom. Everybody's using Zoom. We have Zoom sessions, by the way, people watching and listening, depending on the app you're on. We have Zoom sessions, live Zoom sessions, where we're going to talk about like kind of reaching out when it gets tough, because it's been we've had a lot of people reaching out and direct messages and stuff. But like, what's a good resource through this whole thing?
I've been listening to the new Brene Brown podcast. Mm-hmm. She just came out with that a couple weeks ago, and I love all of her books. I haven't read every single one of them, but I love Brene Brown, and her new podcast has been great. It actually launched right in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis, really hitting hard. And so I think that was really no accident. I think we all need that reassurance and that camaraderie that she offers. So I've been listening to that every week. And I really enjoy a lot of the material she puts out.
What do you want from life? Like, this is one question I thought for somebody like you, like, what do you want from life? Because you've already hit so many things you want to do and the impacts of where you came from. You know, you went back to the village or tribe where you came from, meaning that a pediatric cancer patient, and you've made a lot of differences there. Like, are you planning to build out your platform?
Yeah, I would like to do that. I would love to do more speaking engagements. I would love to have more outreach with people that I can connect with in relationship to our stories. I think our stories and sharing our stories is a really powerful way to connect with people. I especially, as much as I talk about story, I think it's important to share your story, but not be defined by it. Yeah. And that's something that I really try to find the balance between, is sharing it, but not being defined by it. I also think we're put on this planet for more than just working, paying bills, sleeping, and checking off our to-do list. I think it's a process of learning how to love and accept yourself, and then radiating that love and acceptance out to the world and sharing it in whatever arena is relatable to you.
Do you feel like you're ever defined physically? Like, I feel like I'm defined physically. They're like, there's a dude with the messed up legs or whatever. You know what I mean? Do you ever feel like you're...
Yeah, I think at a glance, I think we all are guilty of doing that to ourselves and to each other. And I think we have to like push back against those thoughts, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a big one. For the younger pop, you know, they especially the ones like in that like early 20s, they seem to be really impacted by it right now. So I don't know, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that part has been a huge evolution for me over decades. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were decades where I didn't wear shorts and I would wear long dresses because it was easier to just hide and conceal my leg than have to deal with people staring at me. And I didn't like being stared at. I didn't like to be kind of defined as like the girl with a fake leg or what happened to your leg. I didn't like being approached all the time in that way. And I think it's taken me a long time in my life to get comfortable wearing shorts and owning who I am and loving who I am. And you know what? If I'm having a hard day where I'm limping a little bit because my leg's tired, yeah, I have a fake leg. Like, so what?
Yeah. I get to the point, like, I was comfortable. I was doing a race right before the whole shutdown came. And I'm like, in a pair of shorts, I'm going through a casino because I'm in Vegas and the race is going to be on a strip, you know? And I noticed people are like, all looking like, what's up? Why are his legs so skinny? And then a UNLV, I'm not putting them on blast. God, this sounds horrible. I'm not putting you on blast, UNLV, but one of the girls goes, look at how small his legs are, you know, because like I have a big upper body and big quads, but then like they're so small down there. And I'm like thinking, here I am reliving that event, you know, that I had as a kid, you know, dealing with that. And then I thought, this is for the listeners, not necessarily you, that man, this is a great opportunity to leverage what I have, you know, leverage my difference for my benefit. You know what I mean? And so I did. Mm-hmm. I mentioned what was going on to them and they made a bigger deal out of it. And in a way, I leveraged it to get better opportunities in that race. And yeah, that's taking advantage of the situation, but you might as well. I mean, you're already there. You get more attention. You get a little bit of media attention, something like that. And go out there and race and show them what you can do with what you got. You know, it's one of those things. But that seems to be a big one, man, is dealing with that, dealing with the idea that people look at you physically different. You know, by the way, long dresses go really well in Utah, so you would have been fine there. They're like, they all wear them there. I lived there for a little bit. Man, they wore those long dresses all day. I was the no shorts person all through high school, so I totally get you on that one. But I think you have a really good idea of how do you just kind of embrace it. I have this going on, but we try to teach the population, the younger tribe, embrace it and leverage it. Leverage what your differences are. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have the choice to conceal it or you have the choice to own it. And there may be days still where I'm like, oh gosh, you know, depending on where I'm going, do I want to wear shorts? And, you know, I hope I get to a point someday in my life that I don't even think about it. And I'm working towards that. But, you know, it is a choice to say, like, am I going to own who I am and what I've been through, or am I going to hide it? And I don't think the answer is ever to hide it. I think we went through experiences and we go through experiences in life to learn from them, to grow from them, and to be stronger. And the only way to show people how much stronger we've gotten is by showing them who we are and speaking up when we have an opportunity to share our story or to be seen. You being seen and being heard is a really important thing in our world. And the more people hide the things they've learned, the more we rob the world of the lessons that went along the way too.
You're kind of you fly solo a lot of times. Like, meaning I don't see you like at maybe adaptive orgs or something like that. You do your own thing, which is cool. I totally respect that. But at some point, you got to have some group or something that you kind of rely on. Is there anything within the adaptive community besides A Step Ahead Prosthetics, good people, by the way, in New York? Is there anybody else that you like work with or hang with or what?
Not really. It's kind of the people I've met along the way during my cancer journey that are amputees that, we still have each other in connection. But yeah, A Step Ahead, actually, before this quarantine happened, I was scheduled to go to New York a week ago, and I had to cancel my trip. I was headed out to get my first ever sport leg made. And so that's probably one of my big disappointments of COVID-19 is that I had to cancel that trip. And it's something that in the meantime, I'm working on walking more, getting more fit, trying to build up my strength so that when I do get to go out there, I'm ready to hit the ground running.
What are you going to compete in?
I don't know if I'm going to compete. I think I told you last time when we met that I don't even like to sweat. So I don't know. I think I'm thinking more like yoga, Pilates, walking. I'm kind of low key.
No.
Oh, God.
Wait, where are you located
You're
again?
going to push me to
what city?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, people in Omaha that are competing, adaptive athletes especially, or just coaches listening, reach out to Jill at some point and talking about getting her into something, maybe an OCR or maybe something like that. She'll have so much fun. And you don't have to sweat. You can just walk it, you know what I mean? And put a fan on you. Like, nobody's forcing you. Too bad Warhorse games are canceled. That's not too far. That's a state over from you. And that would have been fun for you to hit. That's exciting. I'm excited for you to get an athletic leg and go. I knew you were thinking about that. And I knew you had some difficulties with the rotationplasty because it's such a unique surgery. I had to read up a lot on rotationplasty when I was first interviewing you because I really digged into your story really heavily. I really wanted to know all the aspects. First, not to step on my own tongue and say something stupid. And second, I really wanted to embrace and get this idea of where you came from. And so that rotationplasty poses so many complications. So it's exciting to see that's going on. I know you're dealing with some chronic pain and stuff. How's that going?
Yeah. I've had issues with chronic pain for years for a while now. Mm-hmm. Currently I'm feeling really good and I'm feeling strong. But a couple years ago, mostly when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, was really probably one of the worst times that I had. I had a prosthesis that just wasn't fitting well and it threw my alignment off and it damaged my joint of my rotationplasty leg. And it really got to the point that I was in constant pain. Anytime I bared weight on my leg or I walked, every step I took hurt. And, it was really tough. I mean, there'd be mornings where the alarm goes off and I'm like, if I get out of bed, then I'm going to have to put my leg on and I'm going to have to stand up and it's going to hurt and I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard. And my kids got me through it because thank God they needed me. And, I had to get up and put my leg on and get after it. So I, kept up my duties as mom. I would go to work and then I'd have to come home and ice my leg and take my prosthesis off. But it was a huge challenge and that lasted for years, honestly. Yeah. And it was kind of a slow, losing of my basic abilities of being able to just walk and stand and do the dishes around the house or walking around at work or walking my kids to school. One of my best friends ended up taking my son to school every day that school year because I was in so much pain that if I walked him to school, I would be done for the rest of the day. So I think during that time, it was probably one of the first times I really learned to lean on people who loved and cared for me and ask for help. Asking for help has been so hard for me because I'm really stubborn. I want to prove I can do it. I'm like a grin and bear it kind of girl, but that doesn't work. It's great to be tough, but there comes a point in time where the toughest thing you can do is ask for help.
I can't let you go without talking more about your experience with Scott, because Scott to me was more than just one person too. It was an experience. It was it's one of the biggest stories I've hundreds of people I've interviewed in different formats, hundreds, if not thousands probably at this point over my life, you know, when it comes to this type of stuff. And it's one of the ones that just sticks out in my head all the time. Like when I think of those deep experiences, and that experience with losing Scott as a child is so in depth. How much is that charged your life? How much does that lead the way for the flag you're carrying, that experience?
Yeah, my relationship with Scott drives a lot of what I do, a lot of who I am, because he was the most selfless person that I ever met. I mean, I remember the day that I was in the hospital receiving chemo, and he lived 9 hours away, and he was in Omaha, and he had been fitted for his first prosthesis. So it's a long, stressful day. Being fit for a prosthetic is hard. And he had been through that process that day, had a 9-hour drive home with his parents, and he insisted that they take him to the hospital because Jill's going to need to see this. And he wanted to show me the prosthesis because I was going to be needing one in a few months, and he needed to show me what it was going to look like and how it was going to work. And, you know, times like that, moments like that, people who give you such a gift, like the simple things mean so much. You know, that simple decision to stop at the hospital can change a person's life. And he never missed an opportunity to pray for me that my experience would be better than his was. You know, even though he was dealing with reoccurrences, he'd be praying that I would be doing fine and that I would be healthy and I would be able to live. So I feel like I always have carried a torch for Scott to not only live for me, but for him. You know, his funeral was so emotional because you're burying a child, like a kid that should have had just been getting started. And his parents always had such an amazing outlook on things. And they actually had a balloon release. And so we released balloons at the funeral to celebrate his life, not just to be sad that he was gone, but to balance it out with gratitude that he was here in the first place. It was a huge honor for me several years back to be able to be a speaker at his 20-year anniversary of his foundation. He actually started a foundation with memorabilia, sports memorabilia that people donated him. And he wanted to put it on tour and make money for pediatric cancer research. And his parents have taken that on, and they've kept it going all these years. It's called the Scott Carter Foundation. It's another organization that I support wholeheartedly because they're amazing people, and they focus on pediatric cancer. So it was fun to be able to go to that 20-year anniversary of his foundation and speak and to talk about him and what an amazing person he was, because he's changed my life for the better.
I love that story. I love all the stories that surround your experience as a kid. I know that they were so tough, but I love the way you traversed them. It's really interesting. Are you going to start a podcast or a vlog? What are we going to do? Come on, let's build this thing.
I don't know. Let's do something. I'm up for it.
Yeah.
I need a creative outlet.
I do think that it's important that we hear your story more. I do think that bringing you back as much as possible is super essential because of what's, especially now, a lot of uncertainty. And then more so is that I belong to a couple groups where kids are they become adaptive athletes, but they're dealing with various levels of pediatric cancer, similar to your experience. And so knowing that there's this person at the end that's doing just amazing things is pretty cool. So I appreciate you being here, Jill. It's awesome to hang with you, and we'll put all your stuff and all your social media contacts in the show notes and everything. It's great to see you. It awesome. Is.
It's great to see you. I really appreciate this break and the opportunity to do my hair and makeup for the first time in a month. Thanks for the excuse.
I'm in sweatpants still. I just put a t-shirt on.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm like, forget it. Nobody's gonna know.
I know. Me too.
Yeah, forget it. Yeah, but thank you so much. Remember, go to livingadaptive.com to find previous episodes, show notes, contacts for guests like this guest, links to social media accounts, and a bunch of other good stuff. So go there. Peace.